guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian. Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a video in which I will be recommending to you 20 short books to help you complete your 2024 reading challenge. Now this is a video that I've done before. I typically do this every year. I skipped one year I think, but this is my third time making this video. And yeah, I love recommending short books. I love reading short books. And in the past, I was always in a rush in like November and December to meet my reading goal as far as like how many books I wanted to complete. I don't do number goals anymore, and I'm very happy about that, but I know a lot of people do, and so I would love to recommend some short books to help you get to your goals this year. And the cool thing is, like I said, this is not the first time I've done this video, but each time I've done it, I've recommended different books. So in this video, I'm going to be recommending 20 short books, but I will also leave links down below to 2 other videos where I recommend 20 different books in each of those videos. So that means if you were to watch all 3, you would have 60 short book recommendations, which I think is pretty cool. If you enjoyed this video, it would mean so much to me if you would like it and subscribe if you haven't already. I post videos 2 to 3 times a week, and yeah, would love if you stuck around. Couple things to note before we jump in. First, all of these books, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, are underneath 250 pages. And additionally, I will be dividing this up into genres, so I will make chapters in this video so you can find the specific genre that you're most interested in, just so you don't have to watch a bunch of stuff you don't care about. Without any further ado, let's jump into the 20 books. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the sci-fi and fantasy short book recommendations. First up is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is 195 pages, at least the copy that I read of it is, and it's a lot of fun. This is a sci-fi horror thriller almost. It's a book that is the first in a series but can be read as a standalone. That's how I've read it, and I'm not sure if I'll continue on with the series because I just really loved the story I got in book 1. Essentially, we follow a group of female scientists who are heading into this Area X, which is a very mysterious and isolated area that people don't know a lot about, and they're trying to do some research and figure out what's going on there because some people have gone in and either don't come out or come out completely changed. And so it's a very interesting story, very thrilling, and just has a great sense of atmosphere. It absolutely flies by and has some great mystery to it. I highly recommend Annihilation. Next up is Ogres by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Now this one I don't want to tell you too much about. What I will tell you is that it's 159 pages. It is sci-fi fantasy, but in ways you might not expect. Essentially, we follow a young man who kind of gets himself in a difficult situation and has to kind of go on the run a little bit. I'll leave it there. I'm not going to tell you anything else about it. It's very short, 159 pages, and I had a blast with it. Next up, I can't make a video without talking about Stephen King, apparently. I do want to recommend The Gunslinger, which is the first book in the Dark Tower series. It's 231 pages. It is weird. It is the start to Stephen King's magnum opus that is the Dark Tower series. It's like a lot of different things. It's a meshing of fantasy and horror and western, and it's just completely unpredictable, absolutely wacky. I hated it the first time I read it. You might too, but it's worth a try, and the more times you come back to it and get deeper into the world, the more you appreciate The Gunslinger, and I personally love it now, so yeah, I definitely recommend. Next, we have an indie book that I really enjoyed this year called Quaint Creatures, Magical and Mundane by Andrew D. Meredith. The ebook version, which is the version I read, is 218 pages. I think the physical is like 260 maybe, but that aside, this is a quaint and lovely little cozy fantasy book. It's essentially about like magical veterinarians. What's more to love? Like, you could not possibly have a more fun and exciting little fantasy book there, and I thought this was really heartwarming and just really engaging. I really enjoyed it. And the last fantasy book that I want to recommend is Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. This is a novella written by the author of the Greenbone Saga. It is a standalone, and it comes in at 150 pages. It's a really cool story in which we follow a society, a civilization that is plagued by these giant creatures that try to kill them, and they ride these giant bird, almost like phoenix-like creatures. And it's super cool. I really love the world building that Fonda Lee was able to do in this tiny little story. Some of the characters were very complex as well, which I really appreciated. If you like the Greenbone Saga, definitely give this a try. Or if you want to try Fonda Lee's writing but don't want to commit to a trilogy of like giant books, try Untethered Sky. It's a good time. Moving on from there, we're going to jump into horror / mystery thriller. I didn't have too many mystery thriller books, so I thought I'd go ahead and throw in horror and mystery thriller together, so let's jump in. First up is a book that I can't shut up about, and that is Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. I love Nat Cassidy. If you watch my channel, you probably know that. He is probably my favorite writing horror author right now. And this is his latest novella. It comes in at 160 pages, and we follow a young man who is on his way to visit a dying family member. He's driving through the night, and he has to make a stop at a gas station because he's just got to get some snacks and go to the bathroom, you know? And he goes into the rest stop bathroom and finds that he's locked in. The lock is on the outside, and things get crazy from there. This book is wild, unpredictable, bloody, and just absolute madness. I had such a good time with it. And again, it's only, 160 pages, so you can't go wrong. Next, we have a novella that I love this year called The Dome by Kay Roy. This comes in at 118 pages. We follow a family as they move into this interestingly structured home that is shaped like a dome, and it's just a bit off, but they're in some kind of desperate circumstances, so they go ahead and move in, despite the fact that there is a portrait of the original owners of the home that is built into the building, and they can't take it down, and there's just this eerie tension that builds throughout the story. You don't really know what to believe, what's really happening, what's in their heads, and all of the characters have a certain level of instability about them that makes you question whether or not they are reliable narrators. I really enjoyed this novella. Next up, we have perhaps the shortest book on this list, which is Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. This is 74 pages, and if you want a horror story that will just absolutely shock you and just have such a wild and icky sense of atmosphere and just give you a great sense of dread, like a great sense of dread. What a weird way to put that. An intense sense of dread, at least. That's a better way of putting it, I suppose. Definitely check out Sour Candy if that sounds interesting to you. We essentially follow a man who is at the store one day when he sees a woman who is struggling with her child, who is just screaming and losing his mind. He kind of tries to ignore it, but then the kid comes up to him and has a piece of sour candy and offers it to him, and he takes it, and it changes his life. I'll leave it at that. But this book was wild. Definitely recommend. Next up is Nightfall by Daniel Barnett. This is the first book in a 6-book series. I think all of them are really quite short, under 200 pages-ish, except maybe the 6th one. But the first book, Nightfall, is 140 pages. This is a horror, post-apocalyptic type story in which the world is thrust into darkness and the shenanigans that happen as a result. I really enjoyed both book 1 and book 2, and again, the whole series is pretty short. So if you just want to binge the Nightfall series, I recommend it. Next up is a mystery series, which is the first book in a very long series. That book is Cop Hater by Ed McBain. I think there are like 50 books in this, and it follows a precinct of cops in this fictional town that is like kind of loosely based off of like New York, that kind of setting. And this is just the first book. It's very much like a serial, almost like pulp type story, and rather than following like a specific character, it follows this precinct, so you get a lot of different perspectives. And I've been told that as you go through the series, it continues to have that, where it's really about the precinct as a whole, and there isn't necessarily one main character, but an ensemble of characters that are recurring. I had a really good time with this. It's mystery, it's action-packed, it's fast-paced. If you want something like that, definitely check out Cop Hater. Next up is Confessions by Kane Minato. This is a thriller that absolutely swept me away. It is kind of an interesting one. So this is translated from Japanese, I believe. And essentially, we have at the start of the story a teacher who is talking to her class, and something happened that really upset the teacher, and now she may or may not be out for revenge. That's all I'm gonna say. Each chapter is told from a different perspective. There's only, I think, 4 chapters though, so it's really quite immersive in that way. Like, you're not like bouncing all over the place. It's one character's perspective, another, and then it's done. Very snappy, very engaging, with some huge twists, not just at the end, but kind of throughout. I really enjoyed this book. This book comes in at 240 pages, and it's a blast. I highly recommend. Lastly, for the genre, I have I Am Not a Serial Killer by Dan Wells. This is kind of horror. It's a young adult aged character, but it doesn't really feel like young adult. We follow a young man who I believe is 17, and he has some tendencies towards wanting to do bad things. The title can give that away for you, but he fights it. He works in a mortuary with his family. It's a family-owned thing, and he tries to just get his ickiness out there. But yeah, some things start happening in his town, and people start wondering if he might be to blame. There's a lot of stuff going on here. This is a 6-book series that I binged in the month of July. I read all 6 of them then. It's a blast. They're all quite short, so if you wanted to start this and binge it, you could do that as well. This book is, oh shoot, I didn't write it down, but it's less than 250 pages or slightly over. I'll put here how many pages it is, but it was a really good time. I had so much fun with the series. All right, moving on, I do want to recommend some literary or like contemporary type fiction. First up, we're going to go with Knock 'em Stiff by Donald Ray Pollock. This is a series of short stories that are all set in this town of Knock 'em Stiff, Ohio. I want to say it's Ohio. But yeah, this follows a lot of different characters all living in the same town, and each of them has something about them that they struggle with. A lot of these characters have secrets. A lot of these characters have hidden passions that are both good and depraved. This book is unhinged, like I love from Donald Ray Pollock. Everything he writes is a little bit unhinged, and I adore it. So this is a great place to start with his books. I absolutely love his novel, The Devil All the Time, and I am planning on reading his latest novel, The Heavenly Table, sometime this month, hopefully. I'm going to try to squeeze it in before the year is over. But if you want to try this author, definitely recommend Knock 'em Stiff. It's excellent. Next up is a novella called Foster by Claire Keegan. This is the first Claire Keegan book that I've read, but I want to read more. This person has also written Small Things Like These and at least one other novella. But Foster is this really heartwarming story about a girl who is sent to live with this foster family while her parents sort out some things going on in their family. I think it's just like the birth of her younger brother or younger sibling. I don't think there's anything else necessarily going on, but it's about found family. It's about changes in life as a young person and how that can impact you and how that's kind of scary and the people that come alongside you to navigate you through that. It's a really beautiful little novella. When I first finished it, I was a little bit underwhelmed, but I've thought about this story a lot, and it's one that I definitely want to revisit. And it is only 128 pages, so what do you have to lose by reading it? Next is one that I guess could kind of be described as magical realism. It's called The Traveling Cat Chronicles. It's by Hiro Arakawa. It is 247 pages, and our main character is a cat. Nothing technically magical happens other than the fact that the narration is told through a cat's perspective. But we follow this cat who is having to be rehomed. They have a wonderful relationship with their owner, but for some reason, the owner has to rehome them. And so the cat and his owner go on this journey, this trip to try to find a new home. He goes and visits his owner's friends and family members, trying to see who can take this cat. Really, the cat is just a narrative tool that is used to describe and discuss the owner's relationships and life, and it's a really interestingly told story. I really enjoyed it. It is very heartwarming at times, very emotional at times, and it's a story that I've thought about a lot this year, so definitely recommend The Traveling Cat Chronicles. Moving on from lit and contemporary fiction, we're going to go ahead and talk about a middle grade series. It's 2 books. I read both of them this year. I gave the first book 5 stars and the second one like a 4.5, and those books are Orbiting Jupiter and Jupiter Rising by Gary D. Schmidt. This is such an impactful story. We follow a young character who is like in middle school age. He's adopted, but he's lived with his parents for a very long time, and they bring on a foster brother who has a troubled past, to say the least. Soon, the main character finds out that his new foster brother is young but has a daughter, and the story is really about him finding out more about his new foster brother and trying to help him come to terms with the fact that he has a daughter and all of the things that happen as a result. The story is so powerful. It's about found family. It is about growing up too young. It is about love. It is about tragedy. It's about a lot of different things. It's very emotional, very powerful. Orbiting Jupiter was fantastic, and its sequel / companion novel, Jupiter Rising, is excellent as well. I highly recommend both of these books. I did want to recommend one nonfiction book as well. I don't read too much nonfiction, but when I do, I typically enjoy it quite a bit. The nonfiction book I want to highlight this year is What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. This is his memoir / talk about his craft of writing and kind of how it relates to his passion for running. This was a really exciting book. I loved getting to take a peek into Haruki Murakami's writing style, his thought process, his creative process. There was so much to unpack here that I really enjoyed. As somebody who has a passion for writing, it was very informative, but at the same time, it was also just about life and about the passions that we have and the ambitions we have and the drive that we have. It was very enlightening. It was a good time. I really enjoyed it. And it was actually the first Haruki Murakami that I read, so it has definitely informed my perspective as I journey into his fiction books. And lastly, I wanted to recommend 3 classics. The first of those is more of a modern classic, that being The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. So this is a collection of short stories, although they are all very central to some specific characters, and all of them involve the Vietnam War. I really enjoyed this collection. I guess I could say there was a lot of sadness in it, which any book involving war, typically you'll experience that. But this really set the scene for what was going on with the people and the generation that was so heavily involved in this war. It was emotional, it was impactful, it was terrifying at times. It was really rattling. It's one that I have revisited in my mind quite a bit. If you haven't already read The Things They Carry, I definitely recommend it. It is, I have been missing page numbers. I'm so sorry about that. 246 pages. The Things They Carried is 246 pages. Next up, I want to recommend The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. This is a very interesting story, and it's very interestingly told. So if you don't know, C.S. Lewis, who is the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, was a Christian, and in this book, he writes a story about a demon writing to his kind of like mentor demon. And it's all about humanity and life on Earth and the struggles and temptations and passions that people grapple with every single day, and kind of the ebb and flow of life, and how sometimes we are at our best and sometimes we are at our worst, and the forces that, you know, kind of interact with that. It's a very interestingly told story, and it's one that I think is very masterful in its use of its narrative device, and it's one that I really enjoyed reading quite a bit. It was a 5-star for me. I highly recommend The Screwtape Letters. Last but not least, I do want to recommend Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is an author who is renowned and has a lot of kind of shorter classics. So if this is an author that you're interested in, definitely check out his other works. But Treasure Island, an iconic classic, absolutely. Very foundational to a lot of adventure stories and storytelling that we have today. Treasure Planet, the Disney movie, was based on Treasure Island. And yeah, what do you want to know? It's about a young boy, I believe named Jim, and kind of how he gets swept up into this pirate's adventure. So it's a good time. It's a classic, but it's very readable, and I definitely recommend checking it out if you just want a quick and enjoyable classic story. And that is it, you guys. Those are your 20 short books for the year that I recommend. Like I said, check out the other 2 videos that are linked down below if you want more recommendations. Yeah, I love short books. I'll be back next year for sure with another 20 to recommend, but until then, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, leave a like or comment or subscribe if you haven't already if you did enjoy this video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.